So I was curious about a possible trade war, or some would argue that there's a trade war already going on or has been going on for a long time between the US and China. And I was particularly interested in how the currency rates affected it or would be affected by it. And so I was asking ChatGPT about all this stuff, and it started talking about the Fed and how it played a big role. It said something that really it just it triggered me. I hate that word. It talked about it used the line that everybody uses these days for the past, like, I don't know, 10 years or maybe even more, about how assuming that the Fed, making the assumption that the Fed can help the economy, that it plays not just an important role, but the important role, that the president and the government and the Fed are in charge of the economy. This assumption that they can manipulate the economy, and if it's bad, it's the president's fault, it's Biden's fault, it's the Fed's fault because they raised interest rates. If they lower interest rates, the economy gets better and all this, right? And it's just a big, a huge pet peeve of mine. So just by way of introduction, I want to talk a little bit about why this bothers me so much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you I'm actually calling it a conversation, a discussion or a debate where I was able to persuade ChatGPT to agree with me. Okay. But let me talk about why this bothers me so much. This is not related to why I think it's wrong. I'm going to explain why it bothers me so much. And the way it's wrong, and the reason it bothers me so much is because it's just become an assumption. And it's become deeply ingrained at all levels of society. I remember 4 years ago, I was looking for a freelancer, a professional economist. So someone who had a master's, PhD from a reputable institution in economics, who had done a lot of research and a lot of study, obviously, and been trained as an economist in the US. And I interviewed like 3. And they all started with that assumption. Okay, these were like guys who had master's degrees. I remember one guy in particular. He had a master's degree from Berkeley, a very strong economics department, and he was working on his PhD there. And it was something about how to make the economy stronger, something like that. And he just automatically assumed, well, the Fed, of course, if they lower interest rates, it's going to spur growth and increase liquidity, and people are going to use that to do what? I don't know. You couldn't even answer that question. I was like, I literally said, and do what? I said, well, make investments and and it shocked me that there's a generation of economists, maybe multiple generations of economists, who believe that the Fed has this incredibly important role to play, and that somehow by manipulating interest rates, they can actually, they assume that they can control the interest rate markets, which is patently false. And anyone who, if you sat down with me for a minute and a half, I could probably convince you that that's false, right? It's that easy to show. You show a chart. You show a chart of like the bond markets, and then you show a chart of the Fed, and you'll see that the Fed is almost always lagging changes in the bond market. So the bond market usually leads. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But it's alarming that, generation after generation, this lie and this assumption is being propagated. It's become institutionalized. That's what bothers me. Is that this lie has become institutionalized, and that people assume that the Fed can help the economy. Okay, I guess that's the first part of why it bothers me. The second part is that why would the incumbents, and I'm talking about the politicians in office, the academics, all these people, why would they want people to think that the Fed can help the economy? Of course, to justify the Fed's existence, to validate and encourage the existence and support of the Fed. And I think it's pretty clear what my view is. The Fed is evil, it's harmful, it's created a lot of the economic inequality, especially in the US. If you want to point one finger at one institution that has created the most damage to the masses, to everyone, you and me. I'm not talking about the elites, the institutions. I'm not talking about corporations or the ruling class, whatever you want to call them. I'm talking about like the 90% of everyone in the economy. The Fed has done the most damage to them, okay? And you have these they're just training more and more academics. Let's call them acolytes, right? Disciples of this ideology that the Fed is a good thing and it's necessary, and without it, the economy will go to shit. And it's a great thing that it can help the economy, right? This is just ridiculous. In the next video, I'm going to start talking about my conversation with ChatGPT about this.